What is up, everybody? Welcome to Ginger Runner Live, episode number 311. We, in the last couple of weeks, we've been handling some topics on the show that we don't normally talk about, and really important topics. Obviously, there's a lot going on across the United States right now, and it's stuff that we need to be talking about. Last week, we had Myrna Valerio on the show. She was very gracious with her time, and some really wonderful conversations that I feel like people should definitely go back and watch and listen to. Very, very important topics of conversation in regards to race and racism in our sport, both running, trail running, and ultra running. Today, we're going to be joined by a good friend of the show, Yassine Diboun, one of our favorite humans on the planet, based out of Portland, Oregon. And we've had him on the show a number of times, just a fantastic athlete. Just recently had an article published in Trail Runner magazine kind of regarding diversity in the sport. So we're going to be talking a lot about that today, what Yassine's been up to, his upbringing, his connection to sport, how diversity has changed, how it can change, that sort of thing, and inclusion within running, trail running, and ultra running. So we're very, very honored to have him on the show. Sit back, relax, everyone. Ginger Runner Live begins now.
Ginger Runner.
Yay! We don't really do yays right now, but it's one of
just did.
But I did just do it. I want to thank everyone for coming and joining us here on Ginger Runner Live, episode number 311. We have been having some heavy conversations on this show for the last couple of weeks, for good reason. Last week's guest, Myrna Valerio, was so gracious with her time. We were just honored to have her on the show, but we talked a lot about race and racism in our sport. Running, trail running, and ultra running. Our guest tonight, we're going to be talking with Yassine Diboun a bit about diversity in our sport, his connection to running and sport in general when he was younger, and how diversity sort of shaped his connection with the sport. Now living in the Pacific Northwest and the trail running scene, ultra running, he's traveled around the globe and run in races across the globe and stuff like that. And we're going to have these open conversations. They're difficult to have, especially live in front of an audience and stuff. But I think that is what is truly important, is to have these conversations, continue the dialogue, and for me, like make the mistakes publicly, and
For most of us.
mm-hmm. And to have these conversations so people can participate in them. I know that there's just so much heaviness going on around the United States and the world, and these types of conversations are very difficult. But I also just want to emphasize again that you can come back and listen to this conversation now, later, podcast form. You'll be able to reach out to Yassine directly. He's just he's a very present person and is always out there. He has his business in Portland that you can help support as well, Y East Wolfpack. We have lots to talk about on tonight's show with our guest tonight, Yassine Diboun. So we'll jump right in. But it's not just myself and Yassine, who we'll introduce in a second. It is also wonderful wife, Kim.
Hi, what's up, everyone? Kim Tashima Newberry here. We are live, so if you have questions or comments for Yassine, please pop them in the chat room. And as Ethan just mentioned, these conversations can feel difficult, but we've also acknowledged heavily that if having a difficult or an awkward situation is the biggest of our problems, we are recognizing that privilege, and we want to continue the awkward or uncomfortable conversations.
Without a doubt. Before we introduce our guest tonight, we do have some individuals that we like to thank at the top of every show. It is because of them that we're able to do these live shows. And that is our Patreon supporters, patreon.com/thegingerrunner. They've been with us for years now, supporting everything that we do on this channel. And during the time with COVID, they have really stepped up and allowed us to continue to do this, despite a lot of the community also having issues with employment and stuff like that. It's been a really fantastic community that has really come together and rallied around each other, which has been a wonderful, wonderful thing. Two individuals at that top tier definitely go above and beyond, especially in these times. Chris Lee and Brian Sands, two just wonderful humans. Chris Lee is out of Hong Kong and has been a longtime supporter, has a great organization called Trailblazer that showcases the region, the trails, helps runners basically get started in that area. He's a wonderful dude. And Brian Sands, also a beautiful story, very inspirational, has lost over 100 pounds in his running journey, is currently training for a 250-mile race. The guy is a total badass. It's awesome to have him on board. And just sending those two guys love. We really appreciate their support, and all of our Patreon crew, really. Go ahead.
Nope, go ahead.
What are you going to say?
Oh, I was going to say, I just want to recognize there's a couple people in the chat room. Maria, Delza, and Vivian are acknowledging that they've had some really tough conversations in their own households, or with their, Maria's talking about having a conversation with her mom. They ended up hanging up on each other. Both of them have echoed the feelings of, it's hard to have these conversations, but I do encourage you all to continue having the conversations.
They have to become part of the conversation on a bigger scale. So we talked about that last week. Kim and I do live shows every day with our Patreon community and the GR crew, and this has been something that we do every day. We either read something, watch something, learn something, listen to something. We talk about it. It's been an ongoing discussion, and it has been very difficult, but it's also been very informative and a wonderful listening and learning process. And that is what tonight's episode is going to be with our wonderful guest, Yassine Diboun. So without further ado, I just want to bring him on. He's been so patient waiting in his home. I think he kicked everyone out of the home so we could have some silence. So we want to make sure that they're not out for too long. Without further ado, Yassine Diboun. Hey, Yassine.
Yay. Welcome.
Thanks for having me, guys. Always good to see you.
You too, man. We've had you on the show a number of times. I feel like we've never had the opportunity to talk about this type of stuff, and that's on me. I know that we've been friends for a number of years, and
we just shared the story about how you stayed at our house. Like you were, I think, our very first house guest as soon as we moved to the Northwest, and we talked a little bit about, I think on one of the Daily Brews, about Yassine slept in this room that we're actually doing the show from.
Not a very big room, and that was before this set was built and stuff. But Yassine, you were on your way. Was it UTMB?
I was, but before that, I had to get an emergency passport because mistakenly I let mine expire. So, hence I was sleeping on the floor of your studio. But it looks great.
Yeah, I mean, I think at the time it was just a room in this house because we had just moved in, and you probably actually had space because there's nothing left now. But these are conversations that you and I have never had until now, and I think let me start by just asking how it's been for you and your family during this time. You have a beautiful daughter and a wonderful wife, and I'm just curious, in Portland, just a neighboring city just south of us, how has it been in that city? How has it been for the family and for you guys? How are you guys holding up?
Well, first off, I'll just say that, you don't need to feel guilty about not having these conversations. I think a lot of people weren't bringing this to the forefront because it wasn't as glaring of an issue, right? So it's not something you bring up all the time, but now we've had this catalyst to really start talking. We need to talk about this stuff now and far and wide. So, to answer your question, I mean, it's been tough. I'm not going to lie. It's been tough everywhere, I think, but the age that my daughter's at, it's been very confusing. It's been in combination with the, quarantining and the pandemic. Everybody's already on edge,
Right.
and routines are upset, and that just compounds everything, right? And so, yeah, it's been stressful. I haven't been getting very good sleep, and that's one thing. As an athlete, I've always tried to keep precious. It was my sleep because that's when we recover. And so now I'm just anxiety. My mind's racing. I'm just not. I'm sleeping like 5 hours a night. Mm-hmm. So, and that's for me. That's like roughly half of what I would like to get.
Right.
But it's so it's been tough. But I've been trying to just have open conversations with my wife and daughter and with other people and like you guys, just continually to talk about this kind of stuff because we can't just sweep it under the rug and be like, okay, there's people doing stuff and it's not affecting us. And you know what I mean? So we need to keep spreading these conversations, as awkward as they may feel or as unnatural as they may feel sometimes.
Yeah, it's certainly been eye-opening as someone who is now really beginning to recognize just the privilege. It's one thing to kind of go about your life and go, yeah, I know I'm privileged, and I know that the color of my skin gives me privilege and that sort of thing. But even just in the last 2 weeks, and Kim and I talked a lot about this on Daily Brew episodes, is just how at the beginning we are and realizing sort of like we're looking at things through a different lens, and it's the first time sort of really looking at it through a different lens, and it is eye-opening, and it's like this is all stuff that I wish we had talked about when we were in high school or in junior high. Like these are all topics that we wish we had been able to address earlier on. With your daughter, she's young. Is this stuff that comes up in school at all, or is this stuff that you are now having to bring up because of what's going on in the news and what's going on around your city? And
again, it was not. I mean, we've always tried to instill in her that everybody, is equal. She had one little instance a few years ago where like somebody didn't want to invite her to a birthday party for some reason, and she couldn't understand why, and it was something weird. It was like about her hair or something like that, and we had to explain to her a few things, and she was so young at the time that she really didn't get it. She's really still doesn't get it, and that's kind of how I started off that Trail Runner magazine article. Was like, that's about the age I was when I heard the Bruce Hornsby and the Range song, The Way It Is. And I heard the lyrics about how a little boy can't go where the other little boys go because he doesn't look like they do. And I was just like, what? I don't understand, Mom. What, and then she went on to tell me, well, I've been having some of those same conversations with her. And she's just, I just, kind of see her just like so innocently just be like, that doesn't make any sense though.
Right.
And it's just really sad because it doesn't make any sense. It's heartbreaking, I mean, her asking why they killed that man. Why did they kill that man? And why did they not stop them? Like why? Very good questions. Very good questions.
Yeah.
Very difficult to answer, like so many other things. I mean, I'm sure you parents out there know, like there's so many questions that the kids ask that you're just like have a hard time answering. But this is very poignant and very tough because it doesn't make sense.
And I can just imagine, like, we don't have kids, but we have nieces and nephews, and hearing just the innocence in their questions. Normally, they all come from a place of that naivety, and I can only imagine what it's like to try to answer and to encapsulate when a simple question has a complex answer that goes beyond just a quick answer, right? Like where do you want to start? Going back in history and everything like that. But I do want to start there by going back in history a little bit with you and where you grew up. You mentioned in the Trail Runner magazine, or you mentioned the Trail Runner magazine article that was just published. If you go to Trail Runner magazine's website right now, Yassine's picture's right there at the front. The article was just published. It's a great article, and I encourage everyone to go give it a read. But where you grew up, predominantly white, and did you feel out of place? Did you feel connected to sport? Like what are those origins for you that eventually led to where you are today?
Well, actually, where I started growing up was actually in a city in Pennsylvania, and it was kind of in a poor middle class area of the city where a lot of my friends were black, were Hispanic, were of color, white. We were all mixed, and we didn't really think about it too much. And we played a lot of sports together. We were out in the streets, all, in the parks every single day playing all together. And it never occurred to me. But when I was in 5th grade, my mom, she was a single mom. She had 3 kids, and she was trying to, every parent tries to do the best for their family. She got an opportunity to, if she moved to a rural part of Pennsylvania to teach, she would get like loan forgiveness because they needed qualified teachers in these areas. So we moved from the city, which was the 3rd biggest city in the state of Pennsylvania behind Philly and Pittsburgh at the time. We moved to a rural part of Pennsylvania, which is in the Allegheny National Forest, which was like 2 hours from the city. And that's when I was going the summer between 5th and 6th grade is when we moved there. That was the town of 5,000 people. And that was the first time that I intensely experienced racism. So that was right in that 5th to 6th grade. And again, it was just like I had a different name. I looked different. And it was just so intense because I had come from a city where like one of my best friends, Lamar Owens, was black, and I had other friends that were black, and it was just not even an issue, you know? In fact, I think if you look at some of my 1st through 4th grade school pictures, it was almost like I was one of the minorities of being not black, you know? So it was just kind of like this culture shock going from that to a logging town in Pennsylvania where it was 99.5% white. And as I said in the article, you know, there was parents that were insistent that I go by do you have a middle name or something we can call you by? Or,
Right.
Things of that nature. You know, I remember being called, you know, racial slurs, you know, all the ones you could think of. And, you know, just like touching somebody's hand and having them be like, ew, don't, you know, stuff like that, which was totally foreign to me, which was just like, where am I? What happened? You know, so that was like the first time that I really started to experience it. And like, I think it's a tough time for any kid anyway, is like middle school as,
Yeah.
you're starting, you know what I mean? As you're starting to develop and mature and hit puberty and find friends. And, you know, for me, that was like a very tough time.
I mean, I remember what I was going through at that age, and it wasn't.
Yeah.
Like that age is there's so much going on. You're learning about yourself. You're learning about what school means, and like, oh, there's
Right.
more than just playing on a playground. Like, oh, I guess I do have to do schoolwork. You know, you're getting into middle school and stuff.
Yeah.
It's. I know that we do have some live questions here. I guess I already lost the question I was going to ask. Oh, it was something that we talked about with Myrna last week. Is that we're so often looking at racism as like overt acts of racism, and it's, you know,
Yeah.
name calling or that sort of thing. But the reality is that racism can be comprised of a lot of more nuanced, subtle things, whether it's part
Like
of
asking somebody if they have a middle name, that's easier
that's
for them
easier
to say. You know,
Right. Exactly. Yes. There was
Did
lots
you
of.
Yeah, were you able to have these conversations with your mom, or was this a
I
new
mean,
normal?
at the time, like, yeah, I think my mom was really spread pretty thin, having 3 young kids by herself. She was also going through her transitions of becoming a teacher as a first time in a new career. But she did have talks with us. I do remember, and I in hindsight, you know, remember talking with guidance counselors a lot, and, you know, therapists and stuff like that, because I mean, I couldn't handle it a lot of times. I mean, I acted out. I was a little hellion at times, you know, and and I was very good at sports. So I think that's where the sport aspect is what really got me accepted. But also just doing like crazy shit. Like people were just like, oh, who's this like city kid coming in here and like spicing things up? He's crazy, you know, like, you know, and also he's a good basketball player. And like, whoa, my mom started soccer in that town because they
Wow.
didn't even know what soccer was. I mean, they knew it was a sport, but that was about it. She started soccer leagues, and, you know, and my brother and sister and I were like the best soccer players in the town because we had played our lives, and, you know, none of them played soccer. So stuff like that. But I started acting out. I started stealing things because the stores there it was almost like going back in time. Like they didn't have any, you know, they just didn't do things the same way they do in the cities, right? So I would like steal like chewing tobacco and cigarettes and things like that and pass them out to people, and that's how I became accepted. And then I also started using those tobacco products, and that's what really started perpetuating this like addiction to substances, really. And one thing led to another, and then it was alcohol, and then you know, it just grew exponentially from there. But I think they go hand in hand, though, because I think, you look at a lot of racial inequalities and addiction and substance abuse, and, a lot of people will turn to substances because, to quiet the voices or to numb yourself out to the pain of that.
Right.
And so, yeah, I think there's definitely a lot there. And that's kind of what I wanted to talk to you about today, too, is, I mean, maybe I'm getting a little ahead, but I will say, like, trail running and getting out into nature has been such a healing part of that. Whereas I think it can also very much help people that are dealing with racism. But yet we don't see that type of diversity in our sport. But
Right.
that's something I really helped change for a multitude of reasons.
You have created some amazing programs for your local community, and I want to get to those a little bit later in the show, because I know that that's a huge part of what you're just mentioning, and bringing diversity to the sport and doing your part, and especially with kids and people of a younger age. Like some of the videos you post and pictures you post and stories you post of you guiding these kids to the trail running world is amazing. Like getting kids into trail running of all races is like, it's such a cool thing to see that this is the future of the sport. And we will absolutely touch on that. With, do we want to get to a live question? Okay. With trail running, and I know that I don't want to gloss over a lot of your history, but as you're talking, I was like, oh yeah, I remember the interview that we did with you for the movie project that we worked on a number of years ago, sort of telling Yassine's story. Behind the Run is the name of the movie. You can watch it on the channel, but it just touches on some of the stuff that Yassine's talking about. But we have this, I was just thinking as you were talking, I was like, this interview that we did, you tell so much of your story and so much of your family life and your dealing with substance and how it sort of shaped your life and got you to where you are today. It like I'm remembering so many parts of it, and I know that a lot of this also takes place in Florida, right? You moved from Pennsylvania to Florida. When do you think trail running came into your life and really began to help? Was it in your time in Florida, or was it when you came out west?
It was basically when the first time I really, well, I will say when I was like in elementary school, there was this guy named Bob Miller who used to take us kids out to like outside the cities and take us to these areas that were natural areas. And I remember just like having the greatest time running down these trails, going to these gorges and into the creeks and playing and stuff like that. So I feel like that seed was planted early on in my life, but then get away from that. I'll talk about Bob Miller a little later too, though, because he did a lot for kids and for people that didn't have the means to do things, that I really want to try to emulate what he did for us, and paying it forward. But yeah, it wasn't until I moved to Florida, Orlando, in mid 90s, 94, and I was in 10th grade. And that was another culture shock, going from, small town Pennsylvania to the heart of a big school in Orlando, Florida, across the street from Universal Studios, Dr. Phillips High School. And that was another huge culture shock. And that, kind of one extreme to the other. But to answer your question, the first time I really experienced the benefits of trail running was when I actually got sober in 2004. So after Florida, I had moved back up north for a bit, and then I had moved out to Colorado, lived out in Colorado for about 4 or 5 years, kind of hit rock bottom out there. And then I moved back east to Ithaca, New York. And that's where I got sober. And that's where I was introduced to trail running. And that's where I kind of cultivated this love of getting out into the forest as a spiritual practice and as a sport of trail running. Yep.
Did you have any experience with diversity in the scene at all in that process? Obviously trail running is predominantly white, and I am really curious if if you were able to experience any diversity earlier in your running career, or if that's changed at all over the years. Before we get into how we can change it and help it and what you're doing now, but I'm just curious if you've experienced it in the past or if you've seen it change at all.
When I got into trail running in 2005 or 2006 back there in New York, it was pretty much the same as it is now in a certain sense. It was just smaller. So now that it's kind of mushroomed and grown as a sport, it's kind of grown in the same areas. It's not. It's pretty much the similar. There wasn't a lot of diversity in the sport then, and there really isn't now still. So, but I will say, first of all, I guess should preface this whole talk saying, like, I don't have all the answers. I do have my own experience and strength and hope to share. I guess I lost my train of thought. So anyway, forgot what I was going to say there, but I haven't seen a lot of growth in that area. And when I moved to Portland, when I was in Ithaca, I was kind of like a big fish in a small pond. And then when I moved to Portland, I kind of hit the area in 2009 where the sport was really growing quickly, rapidly, mushrooming, but it was still not growing in terms of diversity.
And I imagine, back, I started trail running in 2010, first ultra not until 2012. Even then, there was not a lot of press. There wasn't a lot of advertising for trail running. Growing up in the Pacific Northwest, trail running, I'm sure it existed, but it wasn't advertised as trail running. It was just advertised as fast hiking. So there might be gear in the store or something like that you could go buy that was geared towards fast hiking, but it was a sport that you just never saw, just in general. So I imagine at that time, those early aughts or mid to late aughts, it was a sport that you kind of had to find rather than it found you and that sort of thing. So,
and I got introduced to it by some really some friends in Ithaca that one of them still remains a close friend of mine, Ian Golden. He's a race director out there, and he does a lot. I mean, he literally ran for Congress. He's big into politics and stuff. He literally ran for Congress. He ran around the state of New York for Congress. He's the one who helped me kind of get into the sport. He continues to be a close friend of mine. I paced him in his first 100-miler at Wasatch. Great dude. But what I was going to say when I had a total brain fart and I couldn't remember what I was going to was that from day one, the trail running community, as you know, and as most of the listeners right now know, it was such an open, welcoming community that I never felt any sort of overt animosity or racism when I entered the sport. In fact, it was quite the opposite. I felt like I belong. I felt like, even though I look different and I have a different name, right, I still felt like these are my people. I want to hang out to the very end and help clean up after the race. I felt like I was part of something bigger, and I still do. I still don't feel any sort of racism in the sport. There's always stuff that can be microaggressions, I guess, or I could view them as that. But I've always felt like the community has been so tight knit and so close and welcoming, and that's one of the many things I love about the sport is the camaraderie that comes along with it.
I think a lot of people are drawn to it because of the same reasons. I got into it because it felt more pure than just road running with massive amounts of people, and you're not running a race with 30,000 other people. You're running a race with 30 other people or 300 people, and everyone's sort of suffering together, and there's sort of this, you're all equal in a way, just because we all got to get up the same mountain. We all got to get down the mountain. I also am not glossing over the fact that racism does exist in our sport for sure. We're seeing it play out in the last few weeks, just in comments and stuff on this channel. But
not just this channel, but
not just this channel, but multiple sources and stuff. But it is certainly been a community that has been, as a sort of outcast, it's been really welcoming to me, and I love hearing that's how it was for you too.
Yeah,
I want to make
yeah.
sure that we can get to some of these live questions too. Kim, you pulled a couple
Yeah,
aside.
because there was a question that kind of speaks to a little bit of what you were just talking about. Matthew in the chat room says, Yassine, have you been surprised by negative and even outright racist comments that some runners have had in response to the Runner's World and other publications? So have you seen any of those type of negative comments come at you, which is what we were just talking about? Like, it's easy for us to sit here and say, yeah, like the trail running community is so welcome and so inclusive. But as Ethan just mentioned, like even on posts that we've posted about Black Lives Matter, it's kind of in your face of it exists within our system. And Matthew also goes on to say, I've been shocked and disappointed to see it within our community, but realizing that's because of my privilege. I'm not the target of racism, so I just haven't seen it.
No, it's a great question, Matthew. So part of the reason Trail Runner recognized or reached out to me to do this article was because I had done a post on my Instagram a week or two ago about how over the past few months I've received some blatant examples of racism. And I went on to say how, I was parallel parking and I bumped a bumper and somebody called the cops on me, or somebody called me ISIS in the post office, or somebody followed me a few days ago outside the store because they thought I stole something because I didn't buy anything. I just walked in and looked for something in the store. So I made a post about that on social media, and I got an amazing, overwhelming response to that. And I think that's how Trail Runner caught a glimpse of it, and then they wanted to do an article. But anyway, a lot of people spread that post that I did, and then I noticed somebody posted or replied on that, hey, just remember he was the one who stole something from you back in the day. That makes it almost like insinuating that makes it okay to be racist. It's the same way Ahmaud Arbery. Oh, well, he had a criminal background, so he wasn't this runner that he was framed to be. Or George Floyd, he was using counterfeit money and trying to buy something, and he was under the influence of something. That doesn't matter. That doesn't give you the right to kill him or to display racism to somebody. So those are some of the things that I've received and I've seen people comment on. And again, it's just these overly defensive and microaggressions that say it's okay because look, he stole something from you 30 years ago.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So that kind of stuff drives me nuts. But I have not from the running community, like I said in the article, and I'll say it again, running community they're my tribe of people. And I haven't felt that I think there's different issues here. There's lack of diversity, which is not the same as racism. So there's lack of diversity in our sport, but that doesn't mean that it's racist. You know what I mean?
Right.
So yes, there's lack of diversity, and I have some theories of why, and I want to help change that if possible, or at least do my best to do my part. But I don't think they go. I think it's a systemic issue that can result from barriers. Like I said in the article, there's systemic barriers that don't allow certain races to enter the sport, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
But I haven't experienced a lot of racism within the running community. To answer the question.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yes. Sorry. Yes, that does answer the question, Yassine. Question from A2B2 in the chat room. Great question. They asked, how do you approach racial diversity in the youth running group you work with?
So that's a great question because I work part-time at my daughter's school, which is called a Renaissance School of Arts and Sciences. It's a private school. There's only about 150 students in the entire school. I lead what is the cross country and beginning cross country, and it's close to lots of trailheads. And I'm a movement specialist, so I do classes there. Um, Unfortunately, there's only like a few students of color that participate in the actual trail running. But what I want to do going forward is I want to, like you said, Ethan, I started doing these summer trail running camps. So the trail running camp for kids and forest skills. So what I want to start doing is making those open. First of all, they are open to the public, but I want to
Okay.
start doing like more scholarship type based stuff. And I'm already talking about doing like growing a nonprofit wing of our business that really focuses in on diversity because Portland might be the 25th biggest city in the nation, but it's one of the whitest cities out of the top 25. And so doing some scholarships, doing a nonprofit wing where we get funding for this type of stuff. These are some of the ways that I want to improve the diversity because at the school, it's not super diverse. And then Willie's my business partner at East Wolfpack. We, years ago, with our friend Ellie Baumgartner, started this group with these refugee kids, mostly Somalian kids, but really trying to meet up in these low income houses. We started calling them Trail Tuesdays, and we did this, went out every Tuesday. And this was really what kind of ignited the fire for me with the kids, because some of these kids have never even been on trails before. We met every week. We did games. We did track workouts. We did fun stuff. And then it culminated with a point-to-point trail run through Washington Park. And then, stopping at a playground to play and then finishing at a restaurant where we bought everybody like burritos. One of those kids said on the trail, "This is the best day of my life." That right there, him saying that it was the best day of his life, really kind of spurred me on to this. Like, yeah, we got to start these kids young. And really, that's one of the things I do with the students at a Renaissance school is trying to instill this idea of like, we need to get out into nature, not as like a fun hobby, but as a necessary and a regular thing to do as part of our lives.
That is awesome. Like, a part of me just can imagine being one of those kids and like having this experience, and they'll hold on to it forever. Do these kids come back? Have they come back? Is there a chance for them to continue to grow as trail runners and join the sport, contribute to the sport? Have you seen that?
Unfortunately, that first group kind of like fizzled out a little bit. And we were just doing that, like volunteering, and it just kind of like petered out. There was part of it was due to lack of interest, and there were some other issues that happened there. But the Ren School thing continues to happen. The camp, we're already like 20 kids for this summer. Hopefully, we're still able to have it, but and we're going to open up some spots for scholarships too, especially in our recent times that we're having now. We want to open it up, and these are some of the things we can do now.
What about the parents? Like, what did the parents? What did they think of their kids participating in this? I mean, is trail running new to them? Was trail running like, what? Kids are going to be like trail runners? Like, how did they feel? And was it something that they were also into?
They love it. I mean, Portland is very unique in that we have such amazing access. So, I mean, like I said, the school is a couple blocks from a huge network of trails. And I realize that's not the case with every urban area, or any. Sometimes you have to drive quite a ways to be close to forests and trailheads. But the parents absolutely love it. I mean, anytime you can get the kids away from screens, move their body, get them out in nature. The kids at Ren School, sometimes we mix it up. Sometimes we'll do road runs, or we'll go to the track, or we'll go to the trail. Most of the time we do trail. But the days that I say, all right, we're going to go to the track today, they're like, no, let's go to the trail.
They sound like me.
Yeah. I think anytime we have to do a road workout or something, we'll do anything we can to get to the trails.
ATB2 in the chat room is asking if there's any way for people to contribute to these programs.
That's a great question. So I think my wife was actually mentioning that this morning, that like to set up some sort of fund where people can donate to help students and families that can't afford it to be able to do that. And that's kind of what like got us thinking like we should just create like a nonprofit wing of the business that like funds all of this stuff. And so more soon on that. Thank you for the sentiment on that. But yeah, there will be there'll be some opportunities there. So stay tuned on that.
Please keep us posted, because that's something that
it's easy for us to pop the link into this video.
Into the video, and to share, and to tell more about, and to help spread the word. Because I don't know, if the conversation is about diversity in trail running and how we can help make trail running more diverse and make it more accessible to people, I think starting with kids is it. Like, I think being able to show that trail running exists for anybody and everybody. And we started the show talking about your daughter and just the openness of kids to ask these questions and not really understand, you know, why George Floyd was killed and these types of things that they're seeing and hearing. You give kids the opportunity to trail run and to see what sort of environment it is and how cool the people are and how welcoming they are. I see that as like that's one way that we can help make the sport more diverse.
It also helps when they are able to see other people like role models doing it.
Yeah.
So as right now, there's not a whole lot of role models for kids to see doing that. So they want to be like LeBron James or, you know, somebody playing football or baseball or, you know, some of these sports. Whereas we need to really put, you know, people of color on these pedestals and running too, and show them that people of color do trail running.
Yes.
Without a doubt. Part of the big reason that we want to do more of these types of conversations on the show is exactly that. We hope to bring on a lot of guests in the future that of all different backgrounds. I mean, we talk a lot about diversity in our own household, just based off of being in a biracial marriage, and I know you are as well, Yassine, and it's my sister is as well, and we talk about it more often than I think people might realize, but we don't often talk about it here openly. And I think that conversation we plan on doing a lot more. And we really appreciate you even just coming on the show and talking to us a bit about it here today. Since you have traveled the world, you've raced across the globe. You have done huge ultra endurance events with thousands of people participating from UTMB, you know, across Europe and stuff. Have you seen an uptick in diversity? Have you seen people of different races, shades, and everything participate in these events with you? Do you feel, I guess, is that something that you've experienced more elsewhere than here in the US, or?
Well, you know, obviously if I'm doing, you know, a race in like Patagonia, there's going to be a lot more, you know, Latin American people doing, you know, the races and stuff like that. UTMB's got a pretty good mixture of, it's such a huge race, which draws on people from all over the world. So you do see a lot of diversity there. But, you know, I think just in terms of our country, well, I will say that racism is not just, you know, in our country. You know, you have it in Europe as well and other places. But I think the pool of people is so much bigger. In some of these races, we have permits and limitations on our races that it's only a few hundred people. So I think it's a little bit more magnified. But yeah, it's like when I go to these races in other countries too, I'm not like focusing as much on it. Everything's so new too, and being in a different culture. So.
Yeah. We do have a number of live questions too. We like to get to those. Kim, what else we got?
Kurt in the chat room asks, does Yassine feel that holding folks up like himself, Joe Gray, Corey Waltering, Myrna, will help in the diversity space of this sport?
Yes, definitely. I think, you know, people like you guys that have such a great following and a platform, and you know, I see Corey is doing the Ice Age Trail now, and they're, you know, yeah, I think that's great. David Goggins is another guy who's he's been very outspoken about his childhood and the way he grew up and overcame a lot of racism and things like that too. But I think, yeah, continuing to hold these people up. I mean, I was actually just talking to somebody about Joe Gray the other day, and like he's like one of the best trail and mountain runners in history. Like,
Yeah.
and a lot of people don't really realize that. And he's a great guy and he's an amazing runner. And I think, now people are really starting to realize like how unbalanced it is in our sport. I listened to his podcast this morning on Jason Coops. I don't know if you guys listen to that at all, but if you haven't listened to it, it's a good podcast. He talks about a lot of things, and he's experienced quite a lot in terms of racism, and as we all have. And I think that's one of the biggest, I think, surprises when I kind of came out about this and it's much like when I came public, when you made that great video behind the run, when I decided to come out about that. I think there's a lot of parallels with that. As we shine light on that, I opened up about that, and the response I got was positive, and so many people came to me and was just like, "Oh my God, like private message me, I've experienced this, I've experienced that as well." And the same thing with this, I've gotten a lot of messages from people, "Oh, I'm so sorry that you've had to experience that. I've experienced this too, da da da." But I think the difference here is that people were so surprised that I experienced this. Like, wow, like you're such a nice guy. Like, why? I'm so surprised that people, if they would just get to know you. And I said, my response to that is like, that's the whole point of all of this. That's the whole point of like this racism, is that you're judging somebody with this preconceived opinion before you even get to know them.
Yeah.
So that being said, I think, empathy is such an important part of all this. So like what you guys are doing, you're having these conversations, you're really trying to put yourself in other people's shoes and talk about this, which is great. And I think even just like listening to podcasts and things like that, where I'll give a little shout out to my business partner, Willie, who's done a podcast, and he's interviewed quite a few people of color on our podcast. Get After It. PDX is the name of the podcast, but it's just, he's always just telling me, man, everybody's got such a crazy story to get where they are today. I mean, all of us do, right? I mean, we all have our stories, but I think, people of color in this country have had to like start like a couple, places behind as well.
I mean, it's been eye-opening just to, I referenced it earlier, looking through a different lens, because it's so easy as a white person to kind of go, oh, I understand what racism is. I have lived my whole life being aware of it, and I feel I'm a good person, so I don't experience it. I haven't seen it. It doesn't exist in my community, that sort of thing. But it is wild in the last few weeks to just go, whoa, so much of my life was just clouded by privilege and like not really paying attention because you didn't really have to. And now that we're seeing what's happening play out in real time, and we've had the accessibility to resources like podcasts, books, movies, things to read, listen to, and to really,
and people to talk to,
and people to talk to
with. Yeah.
in situations like this, a part of me believes that like we wouldn't be having this conversation if it wasn't for COVID and like everyone being within their own homes and really having nothing to do but like pay attention and having resources digitally available to them. And it's weird how I mean, this is my personal story. I'm not saying I'm speaking for everybody here, but like I have just been so much more open to these conversations and seeing and hearing and listening, and it's been an incredibly eye-opening experience. Speaking of podcasts, go ahead. Yeah. Sorry, Yassine.
Oh, I was just gonna say, I think you're right. I think a lot of people have taken the time because maybe they're not working or they're at home and they're looking more into this. But I think people, like, you go back to like Rodney King when that happened. And I remember distinctly when that happened, and there were riots and looting and stuff was on fire, but it was pre social media. So it was just whatever the news was telling us what was going on or what they were deciding to show. But now there's so many more videos. There's so many more, there's social media platforms where you can share so much information so quickly, where I think it's such a different day and age now. And, in terms of the issues, I think a lot of it has to do with like top down leadership. I mean, right now we have no leadership in our country. And ever since, this administration, like, people have been more emboldened to be outright racist. That's the bottom line. And I've felt it ever since then. Mm-hmm. And so until some of that top down leadership happens and people start, like, which is, I feel like it's starting to happen. People are starting to, and we're not talking about Republicans versus Democrats. I mean, there's people that are morally stepping up and saying, nope, I'm denouncing. I don't care if you're Democrat, Republican, liberal, whatever you are. I'm not supporting that, because that, at the end of the day, we're all human beings. And so I think what it's going to take is like just people stepping up. I mean, I saw, the guy CrossFitting is getting canceled because of some things. I mentioned to Willie, we were at one of our group runs, and this wasn't a racial thing, but we were sitting around a table after one of our group runs, and somebody made a comment that was a little bit degrading, like used a word that was kind of degrading to women. And somebody called somebody out on it. Was just like, it was tense. It was awkward.
I think we just lost you, Yassine. I don't know if you can. Yep, there it is. Reconnecting. Stand by. It says there was a poor network connection. We'll wait for Yassine to jump back on. We might have to try to reconnect, but.
Bettina in the chat room says, leading by example has never been more painfully apparent than now. Mm-hmm. And I think what Yassine was just talking about of, speaking up against something that is said in your circle of friends or your circle of family. Yeah, it may be awkward and it may get heated, but like, we can no longer just surf through conversations and racist comments or, the comment Yassine was just talking about as well. Yeah.
I'm going to try to reconnect with him here just to get him back on, because we were so close. It had to be maybe a Wi-Fi issue, or maybe his computer died or something like that. Yes, says Yassine's not online, so we'll try to get him reconnected here in a second. But yeah, it's something that we had actually just talked about just the other day on Daily Brew, and that sort of thing is like, people are more aware and more conscious of what people are saying, and being able to have that confidence in calling people out and that sort of thing. It's good to see that sort of thing, just because it's easy to kind of get away saying certain things that you may not realize are offensive to some, or
maybe you've said it before with a different audience and nobody said something, so then that person thinks that it's totally appropriate to say again.
Yeah. So as we try to reconnect Yassine, we may actually just end up wrapping up the show, but while we do, it says Yassine's not online, so we may just be dealing with a dead laptop or perhaps an internet issue. In that case, we were getting right here towards the end of the show as it is. I just want to make sure that our live viewers and our audio listeners go support Yassine, follow him on social media at Yassine Diboun, but he also has a great company called Y East Wolfpack, which is a Portland-based running teaching and education program. They do Zoom workouts and all sorts of stuff. We're also partnered with them for GRGR this year.
Yes.
And if you are registered for GRGR, there are coupons in the GRGR downloadable packet that give you discounts to some of those Zoom workouts and Zoom classes and stuff that they do offer. It's both Yassine and his partner Willie McBride, two Portland-based ultra runners and adventurers. They've done so much for the Portland community, trail running and adventure community. And I want to figure out a way how we can help get this program that Yassine was talking about and the pilot program that he started this last summer. I want to figure out how we can make that happen, because I think the more we can get kids involved in trail running, the better.
Mm-hmm.
We saw there's a couple programs in Southern California that had it, but I like just seeing it up here in the Pacific Northwest would be amazing. So I'll get with Yassine and figure out how we can help. But I know we have an amazing community here. People in the chat room are already like, how do we get him a lawyer to help set up
donate?
a 501c3?
How do we volunteer? Yeah.
We'll figure it out. I'll get in touch with him though. And let me just try one last time. See if he can reconnect.
Do we do audio just to close out the show with him?
Oh.
Dude,
Yassine?
I'm so sorry. I don't know what happened here. Can you guys
That
hear
is
me
okay.
That's okay.
We can hear you now. Can you hear us?
Yes. Did this happen one time when you guys were at my house too?
I don't remember, but
Maybe.
I figured either the laptop ran out of batteries or for some reason the internet just booted you.
Yeah,
Dude, no
Oh,
worries.
it's okay.
We vamped for a good. We did what we normally do, which is just talk. So it was totally fine. But we go ahead.
Oh, I was gonna say we were just talking about wanting to help with your programs and wanting to help support you any way we can. Just trying to get kids, diversity. There's so many people in the chat room are like, how can we donate? How can we help? We need to get a lawyer to set up a nonprofit for Yassine. What can we do? So there's a big group of people that do want to help support these things. So please let us know.
Yeah.
Obviously, we don't want to say right now, hey, Yassine, let's do this right now. If it's something that you are wanting to put together, we have resources here. We have people here who want to help, and we want to do everything we can to help. And I was telling people too that they can support Y East Wolfpack. We partner with GRGR and Y East, and there's some great coupon codes to get some of these Zoom classes. Can you just let people know where to go find more info on Y East, more info on you and Willie and everything that you guys are doing? Where can they go?
Absolutely. So Y East, for those of you that don't know, it's the Native American name for Mount Hood. So it's spelled WYEAST and then Wolfpack, WOLFPACK.com. And, my social media is just at Yassine Diboun, my first and last name. And, at Y East Wolfpack, we actually... Willie did such a great job at putting together these pages on our website. One of them has he had compiled a whole list of articles and things you can donate to and ways you can take action, because that's what I think needs to be happening right now is we need to take action. We need to do things. Like I just saw something, it's like some people are out marching on the front lines, protesting. Some people are making silent donations. Some people are, doing this in their own way. Some people are writing articles. Some people are doing live shows like you guys are doing, which is great. We're all doing something. So we just got to be good to each other and just keep our foot on the gas pedal going forward. Because,
Yes.
I think I read something once that like the Americans have like a 10-day memory. It's like after about 10 days, the way our media is and everything, you just forget and you're on to the next thing.
On to the next thing, right?
Yes, the next thing that is going to take over our, our vision basically, and we have to really keep that foot on the gas and just keep collectively doing things together. Like I said, it doesn't mean everybody needs to be out on the front lines marching or protesting or. But there's many different ways. And in my little corner here in Portland, like that's one of the ways I really want to focus on is really helping start these kids young and starting to use trail running and getting out into the forest as a way as a vehicle of like resistance, really. And it's a way of like overcoming, because this is the way it worked for me. I had so much resentment inside of me. And I had healing to do. And I found that when I get out into the forest and when I get out into nature and move, I process life. I'm more compassionate. I have great ideas, and I feel like it's a powerful thing. And I want to share that with people.
We were just commenting yesterday that our runs in the last few weeks have been twofold. one, physically and mentally beneficial. Obviously,
Yep.
physical benefits, just the mental escape of getting out of your house and in this time right now, getting onto single track and into the woods and into mountains is very healthy.
Yes.
But they've also served as a great sort of conversation starter for us, where we're having these conversations that, normally we could do it on the couch face to face, but doing it on a trail run allows you to really sort of process. Like, it frees my brain up
Mm-hmm.
a lot when you're out there just kind of enjoying
Absolutely.
the world, right? Yeah, so that's where we are with that.
All my ideas for our business have come on the trail.
Yeah,
And there's
same.
proven research that shows, when you move your body, it lights up your brain and it really sparks that creative part of your brain.
No doubt.
Yeah, so keep doing it, folks. Yesterday I wanted to stay in, and I was feeling kind of depressed, and I pushed myself out the door by like 7 p.m. And when I got home, I just felt so much better and just freed up headspace for me. And it's not always doesn't always happen. I mean, so especially this day and age, a couple weeks ago was the first time that I ever did this. Was I actually skipped a run because this is kind of heavy, but I skipped a run because I heard that there was white supremacist groups riding around, running people off of the road in their trucks. So that's the reality of that Joe Gray was talking about a little bit too, where, people have thrown stuff out the vehicle at him, or, and I'm thinking, like, I see this Instagram story of like the Proud Boys are driving around Portland, running people off the road, yelling slurs out the window, and even firing some rounds out the window. I was like, yeah, I'm not going running today. And I realized in hindsight that they were downtown, more close to the, protests and things like that. But still, it's like, you never know. And that was the first time that I really was like, now this is really starting to affect me and the things that I love to do. Because even like with the whole COVID and with everything else, I was still able to go out and do my thing in terms of my trail running or running on the roads. And now I'm not. Now I'm skipping my runs because of this. That was a low point for me.
That it's not the first time we actually have heard that. Both within the family and within the community, we've had that exact same sentiment of people reflecting on their going outside and if it's even safe to do so. Those are the stories that have really been eye-opening for me, just hearing that from community members and stuff, and talking about their loved ones or themselves not being able to go outside because of the recent developments.
We heard a story this morning about a family in a local city here. The wife had to go and post on the community board, like, my husband is black and I just want everybody to know he's out for his run, for his fitness.
He'll be out in the morning at 5 a.m.
He's going to be out early in the day.
He's not running from anything.
Yeah.
And the community ended up rallying behind him, and they did a giant community run this weekend, which was amazing to see. The whole community went out and ran with him. But the fact that they had to send out messages to the neighborhood of like, hey, my black husband will be running at 5 a.m. I'm just letting you know he's doing it for exercise. He needs to get out of the house. We're by no means solving a problem with our show, but like as you said, and as people sort of echo in the chat room here, is we got to keep our foot on the gas, and that's what we're doing.
Yeah, we have Chrissy Mail in the chat room right now, and
What's
Chrissy
up, Chrissy?
says, "I'm so glad to hear you say this, Yassine. Keep the foot on the gas pedal. Yes, we have to keep this energy going forward." And I think that is like super important too.
Yep, without a doubt. Yassine, again, we can't thank you enough for taking the time to join us tonight. We hope your family outside can come back in.
We miss you guys. We hope we can see
so
you
much.
in person sometime soon.
You guys are the best. I love you guys. And thank you for doing what you do and spreading the good word and having me on as always.
Absolutely, man. We'll figure out a way that we can get your program happening because it's brilliant. It needs to be everywhere. And we'll see if we can't pull some resources together and see if we can't make it happen. And thank you.
Let's keep working together. I mean, because that's the thing. Like, we all work together and we can get stuff done. Because I mean, in a matter of minutes, Trail Runner contacted me. Willie compiled this awesome list, and then boom, like it got out there. You contacted me. We're doing this. We're spreading this out there. I mean, it just takes us all to work together, and I think it feels good to be working together and spreading positivity. And like you said, keep the foot on the gas too.
Yeah. It's easy to work in an echo chamber, but I agree. Like partnering together and getting the community together, it's powerful. So I appreciate you, man. I appreciate you taking the time tonight. And everyone watching, go follow Yassine at Yassine Diboun. His name is right over there. And support White East Wolfpack. Again, they have lots of cool digital classes that you can take. If you are a GRGR registrant, you can get a discount. There's great discounts for some of their video classes and stuff. I encourage you to do that. And I think that's going to wrap up tonight's show. There is no after show tonight because these are the types of conversations that we want everyone to be able to watch, to listen to. It's all one episode. Kim and I don't plan on pulling our foot off the gas anytime soon. So stick with us, and we'll keep having the conversations that need to be had for everybody. Thank you, Yassine. We appreciate you, man.
I want to support you guys as much as I can too. I know we've been Patreon members and stuff like that too, but yeah, for all of you out there, help these guys out, because it's a collective effort, and you guys do such great work. So I love you guys.
You too, man. Appreciate that.
Thank you, Yassine.
And to all of our live viewers, listeners, everyone, we appreciate you very, very much. The reason we do these is because of this community. It is an amazing community, very welcoming community, as we talked about in this show, like trail runners and the ultra running community. It's just so wonderful. We have so many different people from different backgrounds, diversities, genders, races, everything, religions, political beliefs, whatever. The community is comprised of all of it, and it's a pretty cool thing. So thank you all for the support tonight, watching, listening, being open, and we'll see you all next Monday for another Ginger Runner Live. As far I've taken a break from putting videos on the channel for the last couple of weeks for obvious reasons. It was not the time to do a fun shoe review. It wasn't the time to do really anything except to listen and to learn. So we'll probably be doing some more videos in the coming weeks that will have some content catered towards the discussions that need to be happening right now. Just ask that you guys be patient and come join us on these Ginger Runner Live episodes, because we're not stopping anytime soon. And if you want to support on Patreon, you can. Patreon.com/thegingerrunner. We're doing daily live streams that do talk a lot about this stuff as well as telling stories from our lives and stories from viewers' lives and jokes and all sorts of fun stuff to kind of get everyone on the same page and bring the community together. That is it. Thank you so much, everyone. We hope that you are getting out there and training as hard as you want, racing virtually harder and partying the hardest. We'll see you guys next week for more. Thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Ginger